Welcome back to The Men We Are, a podcast for those of you that have this niggling feeling at the back of your mind and you need a bit of help pinning down what that emotion perhaps means. And sometimes you just need to hear that other guys are going through what you are, just so that you can believe that this isn't it, and that we can work out what's making you feel so grotty and to try and find a way to develop. The crux of this is that I'm just gently opening up, talking about anything that I think I have going on, and just giving my thoughts on the whys and the wherefores, hopefully just to give you a bit of food for thought. And of course, if you are brand new to the podcast, this is episode 7 of a little journey we're on. So if anything from today hits, do subscribe to the show so you can get back through the previous episodes and hopefully unlock some chains that are maybe holding you back. And the episodes are designed to be listened to in order. We're just kind of going through a gentle story that develops. So continuing on from the last episode where I left you with the question, what does growth look like in this season of your life? And with all complex concerns of the mind, most of us were given a very simple definition of growth, no matter how inadequate it was. And it's more, faster, stronger, better, or maybe outwardly, more money, more status, more responsibility, more endurance, all the good stuff. So growth has always been something you could at least point to, and something others could therefore see. So that made it feel quite tangible. And for a long time, that made sense because early life is really about building. You're stacking bricks. I mean, quite literally, skills, career, reputation, a sense of who you are in the world. And it is pretty well hardwired into us to the extent that if you look into any nursery or kindergarten, you will see toddlers building with blocks, and they are immensely proud of what they've created and get absolutely furious when it gets destroyed or torn down. And for me, that's a really, really fair reflection of adult life. But when you reach a certain season of life, something strange happens in that the external growth, it will keep going, but the internal costs start showing up. Those costs might have been there before, but you were just better able to cope with them. And suddenly the old measures don't really feel right anymore. So you're doing well, but that comes with being tired. And no one ever really prepared men for that part. It's like spinning plates when you were younger. It was difficult, took effort, but it didn't take as much of a toll. So if the traditional value is wrong and growth doesn't always mean more, perhaps sometimes growth will mean less, but truer, like a more genuine version. And I'm thinking along the lines of, more genuine encounters, experiences, and basically just the quality of what you have. So personally, I hit this kind of quiet confusion a couple of years ago in my late 30s. But the common realization seems to hit men in that kind of ballpark, their 30s and 40s. And you're looking around and realizing, I did what I was supposed to do. I became responsible. I didn't quit. I showed up. So why do I feel like I'm running on empty? Like, shouldn't all of those things that I did make me feel good and positive and energized? Shouldn't I be happier? So why do I feel like I'm just surviving? Or like, I feel like I'm surviving my own life instead of actually inhabiting it. So it's like you wake up tired after 8 hours of sleep, and it's not necessarily physical fatigue, but your brain is absolutely fried. And you're looking forward to bed 16 hours later, and the day hasn't even got going yet. To me, that's not failure. That's just a recognition of the fact that the old map has stopped working, or at least it needs to be updated. And updating isn't quitting, it's not failure, and you need to get that out of your head pronto. If you change, that's not failure. If maps didn't get updated, we'd still think the earth was flat and you'd go off the edge or over a waterfall or something. So things change, and that takes further change to keep things going in the right direction. So you're no longer just building a life, you're now hopefully living inside the life you built, which is obviously going to feel different from the inside. So where growth used to mean, how much can I carry? The tired you is now kind of asking the awkward question, what is this carrying doing to me? So we need to get to a stage of growth where the goal isn't to keep expanding and, get those traditional markers we spoke of earlier, like money and all of those, the prestige. But instead we need to try and integrate. So what I mean by that is you need to make your life feel like one connected thing instead of a dozen competing things. And that kind of growth, it's annoying, but it's not going to show up on a CV or resume if you're in a different bit of the world, which means it's certainly not going to get any applause. And it doesn't even look impressive from the outside, which means we place less value on it because again, society has made all the external rubbish more valuable, like money and status. So what growth could be is maybe saying no more often, trying to protect your energy, make yourself more emotionally available, and ultimately just allowing yourself to feel a bit more. And that does scare a lot of men, like because none of that fits the old definition of strength. And feeling, certainly for me until fairly recently, felt like a dirty word. And I am just as guilty of thinking that feeling made me vulnerable and being vulnerable was weakness. And I have to admit, I was fucking wrong. Because for me, the realization was a combination of listening to the right people, interacting with the right people, those kind of people that were already quite emotionally intelligent and stable. And ultimately, I was just being humbled and I was being shown how wrong I was. So getting into that wake-up feeling, you might get to a point where you realize you're tired for a deeper reason. And that's really good. That's, at least you're thinking about it. Unfortunately, most people call it burnout, which, to be bluntly clear, it's not just about having too much on your plate, having too much work. It's more about suppression. So you held things for too long. You swallowed too much. There was too much being the steady one, whilst your nervous system was absolutely screaming. And a man can run a business and provide for his family and lead a team and do all the great stuff, and he'll still be emotionally malnourished. Because being competent isn't the same as being nourished, and responsibility isn't the same as being supported. So when those things go missing, you don't collapse. You just start to harden up a bit. And I'm not saying that as in harden the fuck up. I mean, you're literally putting on a metal armor to protect yourself from collapse. And that same metal suit will prevent the two-way flow of energy, which means there's only a few chinks in the armor to allow stuff in and out. So you get sharper, you get clippier, shorter, more distant, less interactive. And I'm not having a go or trying to make you feel badly, because it's not because you don't care, but you've sat there and logically decided that caring is more expensive when you're already exhausted. It's an energy you can't expend. So there's a shift then that happens when a man grows past that survival. And it's when you just don't care about the opinions of others or proving yourself to them anymore. A really nice saying is, boys seek applause, men seek alignment. Basically, you mature and realize no matter what everyone else is saying, it's not nearly as powerful or as important as the things you tell yourself. So I have to be honest in that I'm not there yet either. I'm really fortunate that I have a house with a basement and I have the space and had the opportunity to build a home gym. And because it's just me, I also have the luxury of training topless to see the pump. So for any gym heads, you obviously know the pump is great. And for anyone that doesn't really hit the gym too much, just basically when you're working out with weights, the muscles fill with blood. That makes them a bit bigger. So then you see an instant result, and that makes you train harder. And it's like this kind of perpetual thing that gets you through the session. So luckily I get to do that at home. But I find myself sometimes looking in the mirror and asking myself, what will people think of my body? And I'm not interested whether they think I'm attractive. I'm more concerned if they think I'm over the hill and they're looking at an older man. So really for me, I want to be at the point where I can stop asking, how do I look? And instead I'm able to ask myself, how does this feel inside my body? And for me, that's not weakness. That's maturity. And I do try, but like sometimes you can't quiet the voices that pop up. So I need to figure out a way to actually address that. Because when you ignore your inner world long enough, it doesn't go quiet. It leaks out, and it's going to show as irritation, as withdrawal, sadly even snapping at the people you love. And I'm not giving you excuses for doing that if you do that. But it is, the justification is that you're not broken, you're just full. So the uncomfortable truth that men don't really want to hear is you just cannot keep growing your life without also growing your emotional capacity to go along and live in it. You can't keep adding pressure. Well, no, that's not true. You can keep adding pressure, but eventually there'll be a payment due on that. And the bill for something like that, it's going to be like anxiety, anger, distance, burnout we talked about earlier. Or the scariest one of all for me is just this quiet numbness that just can't be explained. And please, 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 please get this through your head, because I've said before, you're doing well right now as you're trying to figure out how to cope. Just by being here, like perhaps you're just not hitting the bullseye, but even listening to a podcast like this or others, it shows you're trying, it shows you care, and you're at least hitting the dartboard, just not the dead center. And for the darts lovers, I know triple 20 is obviously the best, but all of those things leaking out, that anxiety, the burnout, the emotional distancing, they're not failure. It's your body, it's your brain giving you feedback. And as guys, we're great at responding to other feedback. Like if your hamstrings are tight, you might leave out Russian deadlift on leg day. Or if you're struggling to concentrate and feel a bit heady, you might drink some more water. So we know what to do when we get feedback, and that's to effectively and intelligently respond to it. So why not with more mentally orientated issues? So now that we have a bit of a clearer sense of how that point of our life changing should also change our perspective, what does that growth look like now? And for me, it's basically just staying in conversations, putting the effort to not allow my mind, my thoughts to wander off. It's stopping yourself taking that easy route of shutting down. It's consciously deciding not to just go and do something busy, go and do some busy work to distract yourself. And it looks like letting people see you when you don't have the answers, and that's fine too, because you don't look like a prat, because you're being seen to be there. And even if you don't have the answer and you honestly feel like you look like a prat, it's better to be the prat that's there and visible rather than the one that's just not there at all. And for me, like, I suppose that's resting, taking a break, but without the guilt of it. And it's saying, like, I'm not okay, I'm not perfect, without turning it into a weakness. And that kind of growth doesn't make you softer in a fragile way. It makes you strong in a really human way. So the biggest risk for men isn't that they feel too much. Jesus, like we've established, most men, a lot of men don't feel at all. It's that they feel too little for too long, and then their body will start feeling it for them. And that's going to come out as anger, as distance, sudden explosions that don't match the moment. And for me, this is one that it's happened to me. I'm mortified when it has happened when I think back, because what happens is you're in a situation, someone says or does something, acts in a certain way, and everyone around you is confused by your response, but your nervous system isn't confused at all. It made perfect sense. And I've been there where my response felt like it was completely appropriate to the situation. Just no one really knew how shitty the situation was for me. So for them, it's inappropriate, hence the confusion. So this is kind of where the next layer is going to begin, in that most men weren't taught how to feel. I suppose we were taught more how to endure. I certainly include myself in that number. It's, society, upbringing, the media, films, anything. They all teach us how to be the strong one, the reliable one, the one who doesn't break. It's like a tagline for a really naff action film. But there's a really amazing TED Talk by Brené Brown where she talks about shame. And I promise we will get into shame at some point on this journey. And if you can't wait, you'll find a lot of her videos on video sharing platforms. Without spoiling it completely, she talks about how a man at a book signing, he talks of shame and failure and how it's convenient she, Brené Brown, hadn't actually spoke about male shame. And the spine of his observation was that from his perspective, he felt like his family would rather see him die trying in the saddle of his metaphorical horse than fall off and show he'd failed. So he had placed completely unrealistic expectations upon himself and felt that if he showed feelings, he was showing weakness, which was tantamount to falling off the imaginary horse. But when you swallow emotion long enough, it's not going to disappear. It's just going to wait. It's going to sit there idle. And when it does come back through the cracks, it's going to come out in ways that are going to hurt you and the people around you. So, on the back of that, that's where we're going to go on the next episode. And it's going to be the cost of being the strong one. How men, swallow emotion, how it leaks out anyway, nevertheless. And it's going to come out as anger, distance, burnout. Because growth isn't just about building a life. It's about not losing yourself and your identity whilst you do it. So again, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on board for this week's episode. Hopefully some of the points are starting to give you a bit more clarity, a bit of food for thought. Hopefully you feel supported. You're not on your own. The things I'm going through, you're going through, other guys are probably going through, one big community. Like, subscribe, download, do whatever you can to popularize the episodes, because then more people should hopefully hear them, and hopefully as a community we can help each other out. So until then, I hope you have a good couple of days and the best of luck.